Happy Friday. Welcome to today's tiny tune-up where we will talk about 2 easy ways to find freedom in your body, and hopefully that will help you find some freedom in your life. So I'm not going to wax philosophical about how you're not really free unless your body's free, and you can't be, if you're stuck in your body, then you are stuck in life. I've been waxing philosophical all week about that in my posts, so I'm just going to get right to the structural stuff today. So hey, I see somebody watching there. If you're there, please say hello or give me a hashtag replay if you're watching on replay. So really, when we're talking about when our body is stuck, really, if anything in our body is stuck, then our whole body is stuck, right? Because there's a relationship between all the parts. But there are 2 biggies that stand out, and they are the pelvis and the ribs. So the sit bones and the sternum, specifically, of those 2 whole bodies. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about the pelvis first and the sit bones specifically. So let's start from the beginning. Where are the sit bones? Well, the sit bones are the 2 bones that you can feel when you are sitting, otherwise known as the sits bones or the sitting bones or the ischial tuberosities. You might hear people call it that too. So when you're sitting down, if you kind of rock side to side, you can feel these 2 bones that protrude out. Those are your sit bones. Now, the question is, where should we be sitting on the sit bones? So the sit bones are kind of shaped almost like a rocker. Just realized I don't have my side kick out. So the sit bones are big enough that there's a few places that you could choose from to sit, and some of them are more optimal than others. So you can see here, let me show you the profile view. Here's your 2 sit bones, and you can see that they have this sort of, get it there, good angle, this sort of rocker shape. So within your sit bones, you can sit kind of in the forward part of the sit bone, in the back part, or really right in the middle. You might be able to guess right off the bat what is more optimal, and that is going to be kind of right in the middle, kind of right on top of those, or right on the very bottom of the actual rocker itself. So let's talk about what this means structurally for the rest of your body. So first of all, I just want to say, your spine doesn't necessarily care whether you're sitting or standing. It is going to respond to your pelvis the same way. Now, in our day-to-day culture and society, most of us have different alignment in the pelvis when we're standing compared to the alignment of our pelvis when we're sitting. So let's talk about it sitting first. So let's see, there's kind of 2 common things that I see with the placement of the sit on the sit bones. So the most common one is probably sitting behind the sit bones, sitting behind the actual like sharp curve of the sit bones. So that's where you'll see people kind of like this. Now, I wish I had a chair in here. I'm going to just kind of show it first with my legs out in front of me. So people that have tight hamstrings like myself, or just places where their hamstrings have been adhered to their glute muscles, will the adhesion itself will kind of pull the pelvis under, and it sort of forces you to sit back here like I'm doing now. So if you're back here, you have all kinds of compensations that you have to do to not just fall back, right? So you start to use your upper body to kind of sort of pull yourself forward and balance that out. So that starts to turn into this, of course, real rounded posture, collapsed chest, rolled in shoulders. Probably there's some kind of pressure going on in the neck. So obviously we don't want to be stuck back here. Now, the other thing I see pretty often, not quite as often, but pretty often, I'm going to use this as a chair. So pretend this is a chair. These are 4 yoga blocks here. The other way that I see is people sitting forward of their sit bones. And I also do this depending on if I'm in like a chair where my feet don't touch the ground. So that's when you're kind of in this kind of anterior tilt, like a forward tilt of your pelvis. So now the actual main point of the rocker of my sit bone is pointing back that way. And what this does, of course, is put all kinds of stress on the lower back, first of all, and also your upper body has to compensate, actually similarly to how it had to compensate in the other position, so that you don't just kind of tip forward. Now you have to sort of lift up this way and balance your weight more towards the back of your space instead of just going with it and falling forward. So we don't want to be all the way forward. We don't want to be all the way back here. So if we don't have the flexibility to allow that spine to just stack up naturally and be right in this sort of happy medium place of right at the center of the sit bone, if we don't have that flexibility, what can we do? Well, there's a couple of things you can do just as quick little in-the-moment hacks. So say you're sitting somewhere and you can feel that, whether you're on the floor or a chair or whatever, you can feel that you're way back here. And the more you kind of pay attention to this stuff, the more you can tell what position you're in a given moment. So that's part of your proprioception and a whole other topic we'll talk about another day. But if you're stuck back here, regardless of your flexibility in your hamstrings, regardless of how tight the glutes are and if they're glued to the hamstrings, you can simply reach under, grab one of those sit bones. You're going to kind of spread it out and back. So you kind of feel where it is. You kind of just pull it out. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. So you've just sort of created width and space between those two sit bones so that now your tailbone is able to just fall right down into that little space between. And you can see, even though I haven't done any stretching, I haven't done anything to warm up my hamstrings, I'm now able to sit a little bit more upright because I have a wider, more stable base. I don't feel as much pressure on my low back. I don't feel as much like I'm trying to sort of grip my belly to support me, and I'm not doing as much effort in my legs to hold myself up. So how does that translate to standing? It's a little easier to find it standing. It would just be your sit bones are basically pointing straight down. You see, it looks like you can see me. So your sit bones are basically just pointing straight down. If you were standing, the back behind the sit bones would translate to a tuck of the pelvis. So that posture leads to a lot of gripping in the glutes, gripping in the quads, again, so that you don't fall over, locking in the knees, both in the front of the knees and behind the knees. So this tuck, of course, leads to all kinds of issues. And then if you do the opposite, it's more of that tilt. That's where you're kind of sticking your bum out, sticking your chest out. Again, finding ways to compensate by gripping the toes, locking the knees so that you don't fall over. So if you're standing there, you can kind of go between these extremes and then find that happy medium. Ideally, your sit bones are pointing basically straight down towards your ankles. So that is the first fix. If you free that, it will be easier to free some of the other stuff. So let's move it on up now. Hey, I see a few more people watching. What's up? Good to see ya. Let's move up the body now a little bit and get into the rib cage / sternum. So it's kind of hard to differentiate between the rib cage and the sternum when you're talking about how they affect the pelvis and the neck, etc. Because of course, as we know, the ribs are attached to the sternum and the sternum is attached to the ribs, right? So these all sort of move together. So let's talk about what tends to happen in that upper body that locks us in and keeps us from doing all kinds of really normal activities that we like to do or have to do, like drive or reach up over your head or whatever. So let me start by saying that there's so many cues out there and advice that are not necessarily wrong, but they are often misinterpreted. And a lot of those things have to do with being upright, shoulders back, good posture, don't slouch, don't hunch, pinch your shoulder blades together, get your shoulders back from your ears, all of these things. And really none of those are wrong per se, but they don't really explain what they mean or what you're supposed to do instead. So if you have been told most of your life, and this is something I got a lot of in my dance training, I would hear cues like shoulder blades back, etc. If you are constantly pulling your shoulder blades back and trying to hold yourself up and keep yourself as straight as possible, most likely you are at some point going to go into what we call a rib thrust. And this is where instead of your ribs just kind of hanging out over top of your pelvis, they start to tilt. And the sternum starts to lift up, and we have this little tiny piece at the bottom of the sternum. I'll show you on Skelly here. That really likes that. Oh, we had another injury here with Skelly. His leg just fell off again. I think I need a new one. So this little piece right here, the very, very tip of your sternum, the xiphoid process, that oftentimes when you go into this rib thrust, it starts to point outward, right? So if you imagine a light or a little laser beam or something at the bottom of that little tip of the sternum. If you're constantly doing this, your xiphoid process is pointing somewhere down there, or the higher the worse, right? And that, of course, creates all kinds of debilitating problems in your shoulders and your neck, because now, how do you free your neck from this? A lot of times we try to compensate by jutting forward. If your shoulders are really pinched back and kind of locked into place, you can't turn your head. So what we want to do to have our shoulders be in place, to have, yes, we want that, we don't want them hunched forward, that's true. So shoulders back is accurate, right? But to have them, and really I think a better term would be neutral placement for the shoulders. We want the spine to stack up pretty much effortlessly, right? And this is tied into the whole pelvis thing I just talked about. We don't want to have to do work to balance. If you're doing work for your posture, don't have good posture, unfortunately. It should feel fairly easeful. So to find this neutral position of the shoulders and the sternum and the ribs, it's pretty easy once you find the landmark. This little tip that I just talked about, the xiphoid process, very bottom of the sternum, it should be facing straight down. So again, if you have a light on it, this is similar to the sit bones. If you think of lights at the sit bones, they should basically be straight down. Same here, straight down, so that you're not doing this. Once you realize that you're doing this and you think, where's my light shining, and you bring it back to straight down, you are now in a neutral, fairly effortless position. Now, the extreme opposite of that is also pretty common. The hunched shoulder thing that we were talking about, now the light's like shining in this way, maybe out your back or something. That's no better. So both of those are definitely something you want to avoid. But if you just right now where you're sitting, just take a note, like which way is it going? If it's not just kind of pointing down, then you probably have some shoulder pain or restriction, maybe some low back pain and restriction, maybe even up into the jaw and stuff like that, because everything gets very confused and sort of like convoluted up here once these different compensations happen, and you're going this way up here, and now you have to balance by going that way down there, etc. There's a lot of confusion that can happen. So let's just recap quickly. So pelvis, sit bones, neutral pelvis, sit bones straight down. You don't want to be back of your sit bones, you don't want to be front of your sit bones. Moving on up to the ribs, sternum, straight down. You don't want to be forward, you don't want to be back. If you try now standing up, find your sort of neutral pelvis, so you're not tucked, you're not tipped. Find your, I don't know if you can see me there, find your neutral rib cage, so basically same idea, you're not tucked, you're not tipped, you're shining your light straight down. See how the shoulders are able to hang down from your rib cage, see how your head is able to just sort of stack up now so that the back of the skull is nice and free, the ears are in line with the shoulders are in line with the hips. Rib cage itself is right over the pelvis, it's not forward or back. And also check in, this is just a little side note, also we see a lot of this rib cage over top of more one side than the other. So ideally, of course, you want both sides of the ribs to line up with the legs. You don't want to be all the way over off to one side. And then it trickles on down. So these two things, that's a good starting point. So say you don't know what's going on, you have a lot of pain, you have no idea where to start. This is a great check-in place because it helps you understand, again, where your body is in space. Once you see it, once you literally have landmarks to look for, then you can start to notice the sensations in your body when it's all kind of in the right place, when the lights are pointing in the right direction compared to what your normal thing is. So this is how we start to troubleshoot. This is how we start to gather our data, kind of break it all down, do research, figure out what's not working, what is working. It starts with your structure. So I hope that was helpful. Hey, Rebecca, I just saw you there. Nice to see you. Thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please type them in comments. Yeah, good. Rebecca thought it was cool. I think that when I learned about this rib thrust thing, I was like totally blown away by it because I had been doing this for like most of my life with my light pointing out, and it really contributed, if not was part of the cause of a lot of my recurring issues. So anyway, thanks for watching. If this was interesting to you, we will be going into a lot more detail about this kind of stuff in my Check Your Tech Neck free series coming up, October 4th through the 8th, Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. live, or you can watch on replay. So tell your family, tell your friends, hey Paula, great seeing you. Thanks for watching. Yeah, tell your family, tell your friends, come to the TechNet workshop if that resonates with you. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Big love. Bye, everyone.